Good morning and welcome to the Arapahoe County Public Meeting today, August 25th, 2020. And I'll call the meeting to order. Ron Carl is on the line, County Attorney, and Jolene Sanchez, Clerk to the Board Administrator. Ms. Sanchez, would you call the roll of the board, please?
Yes, Commissioner Conti is absent and excused. Commissioner Sharp?
Here.
Commissioner Baker?
Here.
Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
And Commissioner Holland?
Here. Commissioner Jackson, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Please follow with me, either on mute or all together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Carl, are there any modifications to the agenda this morning?
There are no modifications.
Thank you. I'll ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I so move, Commissioner Holland.
Second, Jackson. Motion made by Commissioner Holland, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This is the time during our meeting where we take any citizen comment on anything that is not on the agenda this morning. Michelle, do we have any citizens who would like to speak at this time?
I don't currently see anybody in the queue at this time.
And we will have public comment for anything that's on the agenda. So we have approval of 3 sets of minutes this morning, and the first is our public meeting minutes for July 14th, 2020. We had a full board. I'll entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Baker. I'll move to approve the minutes from July 14th, 2020. Second, Commissioner Holland.
Motion made by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Commissioner Holland. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our second set of minutes is July 28th. Again, we had a full board. Entertain a motion.
I so move, Bill Holland.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Holland, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our final set of minutes was August 4th. Again, we had a full board. I'll entertain a motion.
Commissioner Baker. Second, Commissioner Baker.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner Baker. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. That's our final set of minutes to approve. Now we'll go to the consent agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented unless somebody wants to pull any item off of the consent agenda.
I move
Madam Chair?
the consent agenda.
I'll second that. I have on my public meetings, I believe, also minutes for August 11th. Do I have the wrong set of public hearing documents?
This is Jolene. I see the same August 11th, 2020.
Okay, I'm looking at the agenda that I have. It doesn't have it on here, but let's go ahead and I'm not sure if we had a full board since I don't have that in front of me.
Present.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I just don't have it on my agenda. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of the meeting minutes, August 11th. Thank you, Commissioner Jackson, for bringing that up. We had a full board. Have a motion.
So I'll move that we approve.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner Holand. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Now we'll go on to the approval of the consent agenda, and I think, Commissioner Holand, you made the motion
Yes.
to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do you have a second?
I so move.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Commissioner Holand, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. We have our first public hearing is on the adoption of the second quarter supplemental appropriation resolutions. Our attorney is Mr. John Christopherson, and our presenter is Ms. Jessica Sapko. John, would you set the foundation, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to state statute, once the county has adopted its annual budget, the board may transfer appropriate monies between funds or between spending agencies within a fund, or if unanticipated revenues are received, the board may elect a supplemental budget and appropriation only after notice of the transfer and or supplemental appropriation has been published. The record should reflect that notice of the 12 amendments to the 2020 budget was published in the August 20th, 2020 issue of the Villager newspaper. Therefore, the board has jurisdiction to consider these 12 amendments to the 2020 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Christopherson. Ms. Sapko, would you go ahead?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Before you this morning are 12 supplemental resolutions, as John mentioned, to amend the 2020 budget. These supplementals were reviewed at the study session on August 10th for the second quarter budget review and recommended to all be brought forward for today's public hearing. So I'll go ahead and highlight a couple of those for you now. In the category of requests requiring discussion, there were a few transfer requests totaling $77,000 from the general fund to the central services fund. Those included a request to retain a vehicle due to go to auction for public works, 3 vehicles due to go to auction for the sheriff's office, and then also the additional cost to upgrade some new vehicles for the sheriff's office. There were a couple of requests that impact the headcount in the general fund. The treasurer's office had a request to increase their headcount by 0.5 FTE in the general fund. That was for the transition of the public trustee based on the change in statute designating the treasurer as the public trustee beginning in July. There was also a request from the sheriff's office to increase their headcount by 3 FTE and then to transfer and upgrade an existing position they have to add 4 positions in total to the RISE program. And those costs for the personnel as well as the startup expenses would be covered within their existing program budget. There were a couple requests from the county attorney's office. One was to appropriate $400,000 in the self-insurance liability fund. That's to cover some additional expenditures for insurance claims. And then they also have a request to transfer about $735,000 from the self-insurance liability fund and then recognize that amount in the workers' compensation fund. That is for some workers' comp insurance recoveries that were inadvertently deposited in the incorrect fund in 2019. And then there are a few requests for facilities and fleet management related to the CARES Act. One is to appropriate $690,000 in the building maintenance fund and then $900,000 in the capital expenditure fund. Those are both from fund balance to cover anticipated expenses or COVID-related projects, and then those will be reimbursed by CARES Act funds that the county has received. In the new revenue category, there were a couple requests. One was to recognize and appropriate about $142,000 in the grant fund. That's for the Sheriff's Office for the Jail-Based Behavioral Health Services Competency Enhancement Program Grant. And there was also a request from Public Works to recognize and appropriate about $1.8 million in the infrastructure fund. That included the Jolly Road, Piccadilly Median Project, the Arapahoe County Local Road Safety Plan, and Quebec Way North. So in total for the general fund, the net impact would be $15,000 increase to expenses and an increase of 3.5 FTE. The building maintenance fund would have a net impact of $690,000 to expenses, and capital improvement fund $900,000 to expenses, both related to the CARES Act reimbursable costs. The central services fund would have a net impact of $68,000 to expenses. Then the self-insurance liability fund would have a $1.1 million impact to expenses, and workers' comp fund would have a $735,000 impact to revenue from that transfer from self-insurance. There would be a neutral impact to the grant fund and infrastructure funds from those additional budget items. So the total net impact for all funds would be about $2.1 million increase to expenses. So that's all I have for you this morning, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Hapko. Are there questions from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Michelle, do we have anyone from the public who would like to make a comment? Please.
We have no one from the public. No, we do not. Oh. Sorry, no, we do not.
All right, and I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Jackson.
I move to adopt the 12 supplemental appropriations for the 2020 budget that were presented to the board at the second quarter budget review study session on August 10th, 2020, and brought forward for today's public hearing for formal adoption.
Commissioner Baker. I think I heard, okay, Commissioner Jackson made the motion. Commissioner Baker seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Our second public hearing today is LDC 20-001 RRA and A1 front setback modifications to accessory buildings. Our presenter is Michelle Lance, Zoning Inspector, Public Works and Development. And our attorney on this matter is Mr. Bob Hill, Senior Assistant County Attorney. Mr. Hill, would you set the foundation, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This land development code, proposed land development code amendment has been noticed by publication in the Villager as required under state law. The board has jurisdiction to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Ms. Lance, would you go ahead, please?
Good morning. This is Michelle Lance with Arapahoe County Zoning. Staff is proposing to change the front setback for accessory buildings in the A1 and the RRA zone district. Currently, our code requires that accessory buildings are even with the front building line of the home or behind it. What we are proposing is to change that setback to a minimum 100 feet from the property line, regardless of where the home is placed. We're proposing this change after both seeing and hearing from our citizens that our current code creates practical difficulties on some of our larger rural properties in the eastern county. apologize. I'm kind of going off of my materials that I have written down because something is happening to my tower right now. However, we did have a Planning Commission meeting on August 8th where Planning Commission did recommend approval of this change 4-2. Our proposal was sent out on referral to both internal and external agencies, as well as soliciting information from the public. We've received very positive feedback for the most part that this is a good idea and allows for the citizens to use their agricultural properties better to suit their needs. Some of the other positive points of this is that it does cut down on the road construction that someone would need to construct if they were to have a larger property or want to set their home back further for more privacy. It does allow easier access for the roads for emergency response to service that building should they need to have fire or medical out there. Also, we have our AE zone district, which is our largest zone district of 35 acres, does not have this requirement. So changing these two agricultural zone districts, A1 and RR-A, would bring those more consistent with our AE zone districts for the agricultural properties. Let's see. In the board summary report, there are some visual examples of our RRA and A1 properties showing where it would be difficult to place a structure on that property with their house being maybe 500 feet back. They've created a very large portion of their property that they'd no longer be able to build on. We did get some comments from citizens who also would appreciate this change. And like I said, we did have the Planning Commission meeting on August 8th, and it was recommended approval 4-2. I'd be happy to answer any questions of staff right now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lance. Are there any questions? I just had one quick one. In terms of the two people who, on the planning, who voted no, what were their biggest concerns or objections? It looks like one of the concerns that we had was asked by one of the planning commissioners is that what would happen if a property had access off of more than one road? What would you consider the front setback? And to that is typically there is only one access that is granted to a property, and that is how they obtain their address. So we would work with our mapping department to determine which access was the one that they were assigned, and then work with them to see if it was possible to have a second access. But we would be determining the front lot line as we always do. And then that was the concern that was noted during that time. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Michelle, do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak on?
No, we do not.
Okay. If there are no further comments or questions from commissioners, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Baker.
in the case, in the case of LDC 20-001, RR-A and A-1 accessory building setback code amendment, the Board of County Commissioners has reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have considered the proposed code amendment, including the staff presentation and rationale for the proposed changes, as well as any public comment presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to approve the proposed amendment to the Land Development Code subject to the following stipulation. 1, staff, with the approval of the county attorney, may correct typographical errors and make such revisions to the code amendment as are necessary to incorporate the approved amendment into the Land Development Code for publication.
Thank you, Commissioner Baker. Do I have a second? Second. Motion made by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our third public hearing this morning is PX 20-001, IREA Subdivision Exemption Plat. Our presenter this morning is Mr. Bill Skinner, Senior Planner, Public Works and Development, and Mr. Robert Hill, Senior Assistant County Attorney, will set the foundation. Mr. Hill?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This proposed subdivision exemption plat has been noticed for public hearing by publication in the Villager and I-70 Scott newspapers. It hasn't been noticed by publication. It's been noticed by mailing and by posting of the sign, posting of the property, and it has been noticed by publication as well. The board has jurisdiction to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. Skinner, please go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill Skinner for the Referral County Planning Division. Intermountain Rural Electrical Association, which I will refer to as IREA in future, is requesting approval of a subdivision exemption plat known as PX 20-001 IREA Substation Subdivision Exemption Plat. The subject parcel for this is a property known to the county as parcel 1983-00-00-235. Is located at 151 Piggott Mile Road, approximately 2,500 feet south of the intersection of Piggott Mile Road and East 6th Avenue. Subject parcel was created in 1974 when the previous owner sold 1.84 acres to IREA. This property was defined by a meets and bounds description and did not undergo a subdivision review or approval process. In other words, there's no plat on file for this property. IREA purchased the property in 1974 and operates an electrical substation on this site. The property is zoned A1, but does not comply with the 19-acre A1 minimum lot size requirement. However, being owned by a public utility, the property is eligible for exemption from subdivision processes and can be considered as a subdivided property if a subdivision exemption is approved by the Board of County Commissioners. This process is provided for in the Land Development Code in Chapter 5, Section 569B. That's where it specifies that the board has authority to do this, provided we have the property owned by a public entity, so to speak, or organization. In this case, public utility. Referral comments, the staff referred this out to appropriate agencies in the area. We received no comment or no response with the exception of the Strasburg Fire District, and their request was simply that they wanted to review the design before building permits were issued. The applicants already complied with that and spoke with the Fire Protection District, and they've spoken with me and they're satisfied. So we've addressed the one comment that came back. Staff findings, there were 3. The application complies with the Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan. The proposed subdivision exemption complies with the requirements in Section 2-20 of the Arapahoe County Development Application Manual. and the proposed subdivision exemption complies with the eligibility and approval criteria in sections 5-6-9B and 5-6-9C of the Arapahoe County Land Development Code. Subdivision exemptions do not appear before the Planning Commission. There is no Planning Commission recommendation available for this. Staff has reviewed the application and we find it to be complete and proper. Staff is recommending approval. Are there any questions?
Questions from Mr. Skinner? Thank you, Mr. Skinner. I believe we have the applicant on the phone. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing none. Michelle, do we have anyone who would like, from the public, who would like to speak on this matter?
We have no one in the queue at this time.
Madam Chair, this is Bob Hill. I would just like to correct the record earlier. I had stated that this was published in the I-70 Scout, and I should have said the Villager. So it was published in the Villager. The board still has jurisdiction over this matter. So I just wanted to correct that point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hill. If there are no further questions, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Baker.
in the case of PX 20-001, IREA Substation Subdivision Exemption Plat, I have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and the public comment as presented at the hearings, and hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the following conditions. 1, prior to signature of the final copy of these plans, the applicant will address all Public Works and Development staff comments. 2, the applicant will comply with the recommendations of the fire district prior to issuance of a building permit.
Thank you, Commissioner Baker. Motion made by Commissioner Baker. Do I have a seconded by Commissioner Jackson? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Being not in favor. And hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks to everyone presenting today. And are there any commissioner comments before we close the meeting? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned. Thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.
The Access Live event has ended. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.